But let me tell you, not only because he had left, he was in the back of the court, and then he went. I think they took up to like a back room. But the you know, all the Diddy kids are there, right? So his daughters are there. I was sitting behind them. It was awkward for me to watch them have to listen to all of this. After he started, the male started getting into a lot of the and stuff, they got up and left.
Who told him to leave? Did Diddy say leave or?
No, Diddy didn't tell them to leave. I don't know if there was a conversation or not. I looked up from writing and I saw them get up, so I don't know. But I know that they were like checking on each other throughout. I saw them ask like Christian at one point, like, "You okay?" Because
do you think that Diddy is actually Justin's father? I wasn't there, you know, but I make empty windows like, damn, how your son look like your best friend? If he like it, I love it.
Diddy's daughters didn't just walk out of that courtroom in silence. They walked out like they had just seen their entire world collapse. They weren't crying for attention. They were crying because of what they had just heard. Inside that room, their father, music mogul, billionaire, icon, was being described in a way no child should ever have to hear. Cassie's testimony was brutal. She spoke of being controlled, manipulated, filmed, and broken. And the worst part? The girls were right there, sitting just feet away while strangers described their father watching, directing, and even joining in on some of the most disturbing scenes imaginable. This wasn't just a courtroom drama. It was a public unmasking. And what those girls heard that day may have shattered more than just their image of Diddy. It might have shattered their entire childhood. So what exactly did they hear that made them get up and leave? Twice. Let's break down every moment, every witness, and the courtroom secrets that changed everything.
Diddy's family is by his side as he appears in court, as the music mogul faces charges of racketeering, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution, all of which he has pleaded not guilty to. Diddy's mom, Janice Combs, sons Quincy, Justin, and Christian, as well as 18-year-old daughter Chance and 17-year-old twins Delilah and Jesse, have all been in the courtroom. The first days of Diddy's trial have included testimony from ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, as well as from male Daniel Phillip, who each graphically recounted encounters between them and Diddy. Twice during Phillip's testimony per People magazine, Diddy's 3 daughters, Chance, Delilah, and Jesse, left the courtroom.
They were seated quietly behind their father, 3 teenage girls trying to stay composed in the middle of a storm. Nobody expected them to show up, let alone stay. But when the male witness started speaking, saying things no child should hear about their parent, something changed. One of them looked like she was about to throw up. Another trembled, visibly shaken. The youngest, she looked numb. Then, without a word, they got up. No one told them to. There was no whispered instruction, they just stood. One had her jacket wrapped around her shoulders like a shield. Another paused, hesitating. The third walked out like she was trying not to fall apart. And as they disappeared through the back door, everyone realized this wasn't just painful, this was personal. Earlier that day, Cassie Ventura entered the courtroom like a woman reborn. Pregnant, glowing, silent. She didn't flinch when the cameras flashed or when her ex, Diddy, locked eyes with her. She walked like someone who had survived hell and came back to testify about it. The prosecution's star witness didn't shed a tear. She didn't shake. She didn't break. She stood on the stand and calmly began unraveling 10 years of horror, and the room went dead quiet. And here's the thing. Cassie wasn't hiding. While other witnesses used aliases or sealed records, she came under her real name, ready to face the monster she once called her partner. The courtroom had already been rattled by Cassie's opening statements, but no one was prepared for what came next. As she spoke, the details spilled out with surgical precision, not sensationalized, not exaggerated, but calm and chilling. She told the jury that what people once whispered about in online forums, the so-called freak-offs, weren't rumors or tabloid clickbait. They were real, regular, systematic, and they weren't just private acts. They were recorded, documented, and allegedly used as leverage.
All there to support him. He blew them kisses in court, made gestures across his heart. But once the opening statements began, Combs was much more dispassionate. At one point, as a man who says he was paid to have sex with Cassie Ventura while Sean Combs sat on the corner masturbating, Combs pushed his chair away from the defense table. His arms went down and he crossed his legs, listening impassively to all of this.
According to her, these weren't fleeting moments of chaos. They were long, orchestrated episodes that sometimes lasted for days. In one instance, she said, the longest session she endured stretched for over 96 hours.
Just before the break, Cassie testified the longest freak-off she was involved in lasted for 4 days. The freak-offs became a job, she said, noting that other encounters took anywhere from 36 to 48 hours. The marathon sessions frequently required periods of recovery from dehydration, fatigue, and drug use.
That detail alone made jaws tighten in the courtroom. And behind her, as she described these events, sat the man accused of turning it all into a twisted routine, completely motionless. But it wasn't just the duration that left the room in disbelief. It was the precision, the alleged scheduling, the rules, the commands. Cassie painted a picture of a world where personal freedom didn't exist, where what she wore, who she interacted with, and even how she reacted was managed like a brand. But what made it worse wasn't the acts themselves. It was how detached they had become. She described being flown to different cities, Vegas, Miami, overseas, only to be isolated in hotel rooms. According to her, this wasn't intimacy. It wasn't passion. It was performance. And the person watching, the one directing everything from the shadows, sat just a few feet away, now being forced to hear it repeated back under oath. But if her testimony shook the room, what came next shattered it, because another witness had just been called, and he wasn't there to speculate. He came with receipts. If Cassie's testimony peeled back the curtain, the next witness ripped it off entirely. When Daniel Phillip walked into the courtroom, most people didn't know what to expect. A professional with a calm demeanor and a steady voice. He didn't flinch as he took the stand. But once he opened his mouth, the entire energy of the room changed.
Well, the latest witness to take the stand today is a man named Daniel Phillips, and he was a male strip show manager. He would manage male strippers who would perform for things like bachelorette parties. But he said that he was paid to have sex with Cassie Ventura back in 2013 in a New York City hotel while Sean Diddy Combs allegedly sat in the corner, watched, and masturbated.
His story wasn't built on rumors or secondhand accounts. It came directly from experience. He explained in clear and measured terms how he had been hired repeatedly by someone in Diddy's inner circle. But it wasn't just the hiring that caught the courtroom off guard. It was the details. Daniel said he was given specific instructions: what to wear, what to bring, how much oil to use, where to stand. And more disturbingly, who would be watching. He described scenarios that didn't feel spontaneous or secret. They felt scheduled, structured, like roles in a script. In his words, it wasn't just about what happened in those rooms. It was how meticulously everything was managed. Every move, every reaction, even how long things were meant to last, was allegedly outlined. And seated in the courtroom that day were people who had once seen Diddy as a creative genius. But what they were now hearing was the portrait of someone accused of using that same talent to orchestrate real-life situations that no one could walk away from unscathed.
Now, Phillips also testified that he witnessed Combs assault Cassie in their home and that he feared for his own life but eventually befriended Cassie. Now, the person to testify before him was the hotel security guard who responded to the incident caught on surveillance video in that Los Angeles hotel back in 2016 when Diddy was caught on video assaulting Cassie, and he testified that Diddy threw a sack of money at him in their hotel room afterwards to keep quiet. That testimony resumes tomorrow with Daniel Phillips, and after that, Cassie Ventura is expected to take the stand. She is the prosecution's star witness.
Then came the moment that flipped everything upside down, the part that caused even the judge to pause. Daniel described one encounter in particular where he claimed Cassie appeared unwell and detached. He said he was told to continue regardless. The silence that followed his statement was deafening. Several reporters stopped typing mid-sentence. One woman in the gallery reportedly dropped her pen and covered her mouth. And although the judge quickly ordered part of the comment stricken from the record, the damage had already been done. The jury had heard it. So had the press. And so had the daughters. who were sitting just feet away as this man described scenes involving their father that were too disturbing to even print in full. Right around that moment, the second walkout happened. It wasn't choreographed. There was no warning. One daughter looked over at her sisters like she was asking for permission. Another already had her jacket halfway on. And the youngest? She didn't look up. She just stood, silent and pale, and walked out of the room like she had just seen something she couldn't unsee. They didn't return after that, and no one in that courtroom blamed them. But while the daughters were walking out, the internet was lighting up. People weren't just horrified, they were furious. And their first question was simple. Why were those girls even in that room to begin with? The moment Diddy's daughters exited that courtroom for the second time, the outside world erupted. Twitter, TikTok, and even mainstream news outlets weren't just reporting the facts. They were questioning the judgment of everyone involved. Why were 3 teenage girls allowed to sit through testimony like that?
The fact that the kids are marching up to that court, praying over everything and walking in with a bunch of women also that are encouraging it. I don't know any father that would want their children to sit through testimony about how much their daddy liked to watch people lubricated. It's concerning to me that the optics of them being there and supporting father are obviously a very strong play for the defense. The jury is seeing them in there. What kids would sit there through this if they didn't love their daddy and this was not true?
Who thought it was a good idea to let them hear graphic, deeply personal stories about their own father in a room full of strangers, cameras, and federal agents? Some argued they were there voluntarily to support their dad. Others believed they didn't fully understand what they were walking into until it was too late. Either way, public opinion wasn't just divided, it was outraged.
And here's the question. And I know it matters for him, obviously, being in a jail versus being with your family. Mm-hmm. But I understand it helps you, in theory, a little bit to have your family in the courtroom. My question is it worth it, bro? Whatever amount that your lawyers say it's good to have your children there because it shows support, is it worth it for what those kids are hearing?
I know.
And that they're not even arguing.
Well, the thing is,
his side's not even arguing against the abuse. That is built in.
Right.
All your kids are hearing about it. All of the sexual escapades, every detail of nasty stuff that you wanted to do and made people do. Your children are hearing, like young children too. Like, but his youngest kids are young.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're going to hear it anyway. That's the bad part about it.
I'm going to argue this, though, Cass.
What's up?
Not in this much detail unless they sought it out. They'd have to go look for it. You're never... Yo, Cass, how about this?
You wouldn't have to go look for it far. You wouldn't have to look for it far, Rose.
No. For what you... When you sit in a courtroom, I'm sure you've been in a courtroom before. When you sit in a trial,
right,
the level of detail that you hear of things that happened is more than you will ever go find about anything ever for the rest of your life, unless you want to research it. Like, the rumor mill isn't going to hit them with every single nasty detail.
Yeah, it is.
And photos.
Nah.
Bro.
One viral tweet read, "I don't know a single parent who would want their kids hearing those details unless they were trying to prove a point or protect an image." And that hit hard. But what made things worse wasn't just the testimony. It was what happened online in the days after. People started pulling screenshots from Instagram and TikTok showing the girls smiling at prom just a few days before the trial. They were dressed in red gowns, laughing, dancing, seemingly carefree.
Diddy's twin daughters, Jessie and Delilah, showed up to their Los Angeles high school prom on May 17th in bold red gowns. The celebration was held at the Harbor House, and the girls made a statement by arriving fashionably late, joking, "The party doesn't start until we walk in." Their appearance at prom came shortly after attending their father's criminal trial.
Then, those same images were paired with audio from the courtroom. Cassie's voice, Daniel's statements. The reaction was instant and harsh. Some viewers accused the family of trying to manage optics to create a narrative of normalcy while chaos exploded behind the scenes. Others defended the daughters, saying the smiles were just masks, armor worn by young women trying to cope with the unimaginable. And then came the rumor that changed everything. Whispered first in court, then amplified online, it suggested that one of the young people involved in the events described during testimony may have been someone from the daughter's own school. That wasn't just shocking, it was horrifying, because it meant that what they heard in court might not have been abstract or distant. It could have involved people they knew, people they saw in class, people who showed up in yearbook photos and school functions. That turned an already devastating situation into something deeply personal. And suddenly, their walkout wasn't just emotional, it was survival. A quiet escape from a courtroom that had become a psychological battlefield. But as the questions mounted and emotions spiraled, the shadows of someone who wasn't in that courtroom began creeping back into focus. Someone whose story, although buried, might hold the key to everything unraveling now. As public attention zeroed in on the daughters, a name kept resurfacing in whispers: Kim Porter. She wasn't seated in the courtroom. She couldn't be. She passed away in 2018 under circumstances that, at the time, were labeled natural but have never stopped raising eyebrows.
That Diddy had something to do with the death of his ex-partner and the mother to his children, a woman named Kim Porter. Now, what happened was she mysteriously died of pneumonia at the age of 47. Not the typical way that a 47-year-old goes out, especially just when they are about to publish a tell-all book on their very famous ex, Diddy.
Officially, she died from pneumonia. But unofficially, people close to her have never bought that story. Especially not after insiders revealed that, just before her death, Kim was reportedly working on a memoir, one that promised to reveal everything she had seen, lived through, and stayed quiet about for years. That book vanished without a trace. And now, as Cassie testified, those vanished words were beginning to echo from a new mouth. Observers in the courtroom didn't miss the overlap. Cassie was describing control, isolation, alleged manipulation that didn't begin or end with her. She painted a picture of a system, a routine. And that's what made the silence around Kim so haunting. Because if she had seen the same things and was planning to expose them, what really happened to her? And more importantly, what did she know?
Through our PIs right now, we do have some evidence that Kim Porter may have been poisoned and murdered. We need to listen to the people that are online, even these online sleuths, the bloggers. A lot of information comes out from this kind of community. And there's talk of toxins being in her system at first. It was called deferred at first, then it was changed.
The weight of that unspoken question hung over the trial like smoke. Cassie wasn't just giving her own testimony. She might have been unknowingly continuing a story Kim never got to finish. And for those watching closely, it didn't feel like coincidence. But what made it truly unsettling was how this shifted the daughter's position in the trial. Because Kim Porter wasn't just a name from the past, she was their mother. And the realization that their mom may have tried to protect them, to reveal something, and potentially lost her life in the process, that changed everything.
Allegedly, Kim was fine the day before and the day of her and then now she found in the bed dead from pneumonia. That just don't sound right, bro. That don't sound right at all.
So you feel the same way about her death being suspect?
I don't think nobody in America thinks nothing suspicious about Kim's death, bro. If you are rich like that, you could, Kim had, I think a net worth of like, what, 12 million a year or something like that? Kim could have called any doctor to come over and look at her. If she was that bad, she could have called an ambulance or something like that. Everything is suspicious about her, bruh.
It added a depth of heartbreak that no courtroom transcript could fully capture. People began revisiting old interviews, old photos, even old social media posts from Kim, looking for clues, coded warnings, subtle signs, anything that hinted she'd been trying to speak out. And the more they looked, the more they found questions no one had dared to ask publicly. Until now. And just when the weight of the past seemed too heavy to bear, the prosecution introduced something no one saw coming: sealed evidence that would bring the trial into an entirely new dimension. Just when things couldn't get heavier, sealed evidence entered the trial. Rumors swirled that Diddy might not be the biological father of all his children. Industry insiders dug up old photos, weird timeline overlaps, and vague quotes from Kim before her passing. Some claimed that at least one of the daughters might have known, or suspected. And when they walked out the second time, it wasn't just pain on their faces, it was betrayal. One eyewitness said, they looked like they just learned their whole life was a lie. What if the courtroom didn't just expose Diddy's crimes, but their own origin story? By the time the prosecution wrapped day one with sealed evidence, 2 explosive testimonies, and the daughter's emotional walkout, it was clear that the narrative had spiraled far beyond anyone's control. And that's when Diddy's legal team decided to pivot, not by denying everything outright, but by reframing the entire story. Their approach turned the spotlight away from the accusations and onto the system itself.
Attorneys for Sean Diddy Combs want one of the 3 counts against him thrown out. They say he's been the target of an unfair and racially motivated prosecution. The charge they want dismissed is transportation to engage in prostitution. The claim he hired sex workers and brought them across state lines. Combs' attorneys say the law he's being prosecuted under has only been used to target black men. Prosecutors call the racism claim baseless. Combs has pleaded not guilty to 2 other federal charges: racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking.
In court filings and interviews, his attorneys claimed that this case wasn't about wrongdoing, it was about power. More specifically, about punishing a successful black man with influence and enemies. They cited the Mann Act, an old federal law historically misused to criminalize black men in America, and argued that this entire case was built on outdated, racially charged legal tools. But while that argument raised eyebrows, it didn't erase what had already been said in court, and it definitely didn't undo the emotional weight that had rippled through the courtroom. As the defense tried to paint the situation as a messy breakup between 2 flawed exes, viewers watching online weren't buying it.
Please, this is not the time. This is not the time. We have all been knowing that Diddy is a villain, okay? Diddy did it. Did you not see the footage of him and Cassie? Yes, we all know it's deeper than Diddy. Of course we do. We're not stupid. But please, let's just not use the race card on this one. Diddy is a villain. Are there hundreds of other villains out there? Yes. Probably worse than Diddy, I know. But let's focus on Diddy right now. Diddy is a villain. End of.
The phrase character assassin was floated. The idea that Cassie might be exaggerating or bitter was hinted at by defense counsel. But with every attempt to shift blame, it seemed like the courtroom leaned further away from sympathy. Because this wasn't just a story of a toxic relationship, it was a pattern. One that stretched over years, across multiple witnesses, and through multiple cities. And the daughters walking out? That wasn't something a publicist could spin. Meanwhile, the internet was on fire. TikTok edits were going viral, pairing Cassie's calm, graphic testimony with clips of Diddy performing on stage, smiling at red carpets, or posing with his kids. Twitter threads unraveled the timeline of Kim Porter's life, her final days, and what she might have known. Comment sections weren't asking, "Is he guilty?" anymore. They were asking, "How long has this been going on?" Even supporters who once defended him were starting to go quiet. Because this wasn't just about moral outrage, it was about emotional erosion. The version of Diddy that fans had admired for decades was fading fast. And what was replacing it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was unforgivable. And still, his lawyers pushed back. They asked why Cassie held onto the tapes, why she stayed, why she didn't leave sooner. But with each question, she remained poised. Her answer was simple. She was young, isolated, and made to believe that what was happening to her was love. And when she said that out loud in court, when she looked directly at the jury and told them that love came with conditions, with fear, and with silence, it didn't sound like someone trying to win a case. It sounded like someone finally free enough to tell the truth. By the end of the day, it wasn't about PR anymore. It wasn't about old laws, celebrity spin, or clever legal language. It was about a man who spent years crafting a legacy and watching it fall apart in one afternoon. And the daughters, once his most innocent defenders, were now the most unforgettable image from that courtroom. Because no matter how many arguments were made or how many press statements were released, nothing could undo the sight of those 3 girls walking out, quietly, painfully, and forever changed. By the time court adjourned that day, it wasn't just a trial anymore. It was the collapse of a carefully built illusion. Diddy, once seen as untouchable, wasn't just facing legal pressure. He was facing something far worse, a shift in public consciousness. The daughters who had once smiled beside him on red carpets, celebrated him on birthdays, and appeared in picture-perfect family portraits were now silent witnesses to the unraveling of everything they thought they knew. Their walkout didn't just make headlines, it became a symbol, a turning point. And for millions of people watching, it raised questions that no verdict could fully answer, because this isn't just about whether Diddy is found guilty or not. It's about the ripple effect of power unchecked, about what happens when the people closest to the truth are also the ones least able to speak it. Cassie may have delivered the testimony, but the daughters wore the consequences on their faces. Their presence in that courtroom turned the abstract into reality. And when they walked out twice, it felt like the final admission that the damage wasn't just legal, it was generational. Now the world is watching, not just for justice, but for answers. Can a family recover from this level of exposure? Can innocence ever truly be restored once it's been shattered in public view? And if even Diddy's own daughters had to walk away to protect their peace, what does that say about everything he tried so hard to hide? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Should the daughters have been in that courtroom at all? Are they victims too? Or were they just caught in the blast of something much bigger? And is Diddy finally being exposed, or just fighting to keep the last pieces of his legacy intact? Give us a like, subscribe, and stay close. Because if what's coming next in this trial is anything like what we've already seen, we haven't even hit the deepest part yet. See you in the next one, and stay tuned.